Over the years, I've worked with many people who encounter the condition of suffering. It is a human condition, whether you're rich or poor, healthy or unhealthy. You go through this experience because it's a tool to sharpen you. So there are 4 stages that you typically go through, and I had to walk through them myself because I experienced at certain stages of my life unbearable suffering. And the kind of pain that I went through was so bad I could actually fracture the knuckles on both of my hands in such rage. In order for me to overcome that, I had to look inside myself and to discover what was happening. So I'm going to walk through these 4 stages to help you to understand and to triangulate the pain so that you can eventually release it. So stage 1 is accepting and acknowledging the pain. We all know that the pain is not the most pleasant thing to go through, but we can't avoid it. So the moment it happens, it is a mode for you to keep track of so that you can detect where it came from or how it occurred. The reason why you have to do that is because, again, as a psychotherapist, I'll bring people into their history to talk a little bit about their childhood to identify this. Was it something that you did? So, for example, me punching the wall obviously would potentially cause my knuckles to fracture, right? So I did that to myself. However, there's something else that could be potentially an underlying cause, which is society's expectations of us. In 1968, Robert Rosenthal and Lenora Jacobson discovered something called the Pygmalion effect. That means one's positive expectations on a classroom could actually dictate the difference in terms of their grades just simply through expectation. And on top of that, there is a flip side of it. So Jane Elliott and her famous blue eyes, brown eyes experiment was the beginnings of the golem effect. So a negative expectation of certain people creates negative behaviors of that person. Societal pressure, the thing that's unconsciously given to you to have to deal with, could be something that is explored so that it becomes easier for you to let go. And of course the third one is what is known as transgenerational trauma. Go read it up. It's a real thing. There was a classic study of skip generation in terms of those who were Jewish and they were sent to Nazi concentration camps. The amount of level of trauma seemed to be passed down even 2 or 3 generations later. So if you think about your experiences, don't underestimate the possibility that somewhere down your ancestry, somebody experienced something that they couldn't bring full circle and they need you now to deal with it. It's sort of like a ghost of the past. So that's pain. You need to know where it came from. Stage 2 is where you try to deny it, right? It's like you push it away, you get into addictive patterns. Why? Because they're self-soothing. And because they get into self-soothing patterns, these addiction patterns will stay stable as long as you have access to the substances or behaviors that will help you to soothe. Unfortunately, I don't think that's the best way to deal with things, isn't it? So when you get into addictive cycles, that kind of habit tends to stick on with you and it causes even more downstream problems down the line. It might be okay for a short while, but it does accumulate into other kinds of problems. So when you gear yourself towards identifying a pain, you can use this to triangulate as well. Do you have self-soothing behaviors? And are they increasing whenever you encounter pressure, stress, anger, negative emotions, and so on? If you do, then that's something to pay attention to, because now with an awareness of the pain and awareness of your addictive cycles, your self-soothing cycles, you can then triangulate it to what you need to confront. And that's stage 3. Confrontation therefore means not an aggressive one where you're confronting and getting angry. It's a gentle mode of confrontation. You're simply sitting down with a child who's throwing a tantrum and asking it questions. And you're attempting to discern its highest positive intention. Because most negative emotions don't mature because you don't have a chance to interact with it, right? So you sit down, have a conversation with anger, have a conversation with anxiety, have a conversation with fear, and find out, hey, what's going on there? What is it that you really want? What is your highest intention? When it's immature, it's not going to give you a very good answer immediately. It's going to say, I just want everybody to suffer. Right? Or I want you to die, or something like that, which could be very detrimental if you just listen to the lowest layers of intent. But what's the purpose of saying that? The purpose of saying that will be more elevated. It could be because it's afraid and it's really angry. And if it's angry, what does it want? It wants to be at peace, for example. Now, I'm utilizing this verbiage. It's a strategy known as chunking in neuro-linguistic programming. And if you'd like to get a sense of how this whole full circle experience actually works, go to my About Me page, submit the form requirements, and I'll be very happy to see whether I'm able to support your release of these emotions. I've done this for many people before. I've done it for myself before. I do remember myself getting so angry at the smallest things. When someone wouldn't want to continue a conversation with me and walk away, I'd hit the wall and fracture all my knuckles on both hands. Now, of course, that pain was terrible. I remember going to the hospital and trying to get myself sorted out. It was shocking to me that I could go into that kind of a rage. Guess what? Transgenerational trauma that I didn't know existed. And as a result of that, I was able to release it and stop doing it so that I would be able to, maintain the use of my hands, at least, right? So through that process, I began to recognize that I didn't have to be so angry anymore. I could release it. I could just put it away. And this is where stage 4 comes into the picture. How do you release it? You only release it when you find that there's a better choice. The brain always functions that way. If trauma exists and the only choice is to go into addictive behaviors, then that's the best choice so far. But if trauma takes place and you realize that that's not what you need or want, and you recognize that there's a much better way to resolve this, then your brain will gravitate towards that as a better route. What do? You sit down once again with this part of you that actually created this pain, acknowledge it just like a child would, and speak to it gently in that confrontation stage and say, thank you for revealing this new pathway. I'm going to lean into it. Let's have this conversation going. If, let's say, I leaned into it and it did work, great. If it didn't work, please inform me. What else should I do? And thank it and then just let it go, because usually that's as easy as it gets. Now, this 4-stage process is a cycle. You'll come to have pain. Nobody escapes it. You move from pain into denial. A lot of people don't have the tenacity to directly confront pain, so you usually try to deny it in some form or other. Then you go into the cycle of confrontation. Most people tend to be a bit less compassionate toward themselves, so confrontation goes awry. Why? Because it's just a reflection of the pain. However, if you get a methodology to just sit down and ask about intention as if it's a child throwing a tantrum, you might have a different method to do that confrontation. Then once you've learned the lesson, a higher or more emergent and more effective goal will show up, and that's going to be your pathway moving forward. Test it out, and you'll probably find that this negativity, this pain, tends to fall away. The devil is in the details. If you need me to walk through this with you, let me know, and I'll be very happy to consider whether my time and my expertise is suited for your kind of area of pain. The last year was filled with certain types of pain. You've walked through it, you survived it, congratulations. Next year, you have to be prepared to let go of the baggage of the past so that challenges of the future can be dealt with clearly and effectively. So that as a community, we can get healthier mentally, spiritually, physically, and emotionally. So I hope this video was useful for you. If you liked it, please click the like button, please hit the subscribe button, and let me know if there's anything I can do to support you, to elevate you from your pain and suffering in order for you to take actions for abundance.